All right, so let's dive into this idea of compartmentalizing. And this came up over the weekend, like most of the stuff does, right? This came up over the weekend, and I actually thought about Jerry. So if y'all missed the back to reality thing, you missed something. I'm just saying, because it was fantastic. But I was watching Jerry, and she was walking around, and I was thinking about the stuff that I do. And anytime you put on something, anytime you do something, anytime you show up as a leader. So just again, remember, leadership is about behavior, not about position. Anytime you show up as a leader, anytime you're trying to drive something or do something, we sometimes start to compartmentalize, right? Because there's so much going on, there's so much noise, there's so much activity that we start to compartmentalize. And I was actually, there's something that I'm working with in my business and some other things that are going on, and I found myself compartmentalizing. I was talking to my my really good friend who's a priest, and talking to my therapist about this too. And I'm like, but if you think about leadership, because of course I can only talk about me for so long, and I'm like, but if it happens to other people, right? So when you are thinking about how you serve others and how you show up, there then gets to be this conflict between how am I showing up as me? How am I being authentic? How am I being truthful? If I'm compartmentalizing, right? If I'm not telling everybody everything, how am I compartmentalizing? It's that battle around transparency, right? Authenticity, vulnerability, all those kind of things, all those words that we just toss around, right? And people don't really know how to manage through all of that. And some compartmentalization, sometimes we take something, we put it in a little box, we put it aside because we just don't have the time or energy or the emotional stamina to deal with it. And that's reasonable. That's human nature. We can only do so much, because really, even though we talk about multitasking is a fallacy. All right. Are we really doing multiple things at one time? Yeah. We really are not. It just feels like it sometimes. And so we do have to take things and put them aside and compartmentalize. But as leaders, how do you protect your mental energy, your emotional energy? How do you protect your ability to show up and execute and be able to compartmentalize the things you need to, but still be authentic and approachable and open and all of that kind of stuff? And as my podcast guest this week, Celine Williams, talked about, one, it's all individual. It's all individual. But two, especially in leadership positions, and especially the higher you get up in an organization, and especially the more responsibility you have, that whole idea, as she said, is it's lonely at the top, is so real. Because there's so much stuff that there's so much vision that you have, there's so many things that need to happen, or the background of what was going to happen that other people don't know. And so you want to talk to people, you want to let them know, you want to bring them in, you want them to be comfortable, you want them to trust. And one way to get people to trust is to be able to share information with them, right? But not everyone, and she said this so magically, y'all got to listen to this podcast. Not everyone is responsible or capable of handling all of the information that you have. I'm going to say that again. Not everyone is responsible or capable for handling all the information that you have. And so when we project upon people, I'm just going to open the kimono and dump everything. I'm going to let you know everything that's going on. Not everybody is in a position to be able to handle that, nor should they. Sometimes people just need to know the stuff that they need to know to do the job that they need to do. More than that is more than they can handle. Either it's too much for their responsibility, it's, as they say, it's too much for the job grade, right? Or it could be they just don't have either the professional maturity or the professional experience or the personal experience to be able to handle what you're giving them, the additional information that you're giving them. For those of you who are in corporate settings, this is in particular at the highest levels. It really does get lonely at the top, right? Especially if you are in organizations like human resources, like legal, like finance. If you're the CEO, the reason being, and I'm not saying operations folks aren't important, because operations people are very important. But I'm saying those groups or those areas can be even more lonely, because the information you get is so deep and so detailed and so impactful that you have to hold things tight. You have to, some for compliance and some because if you share it too soon, if you share it too broadly, if you share it with the wrong person, if they don't know the background, all of these kind of things, the damage that can be done is significant. It's significant. And what that means is you end up holding a lot of stuff, and y'all's secrets and secrecy festers. It gets in, it sows roots, and it just festers. That's that isolation that comes from secrecy is just hard. It's hard to tolerate. It's hard to live with, right? It's hard to deal with. And I don't mean secrecy in terms of, covert, you holding on to something really, really ugly. That's not what I mean. But anytime you are having to hold something tight and hold something in confidence, it makes it kind of difficult. And so you're having to compartmentalize all of this really heavy stuff that all of this heavy information that because the damage that can be done if you share it is really big. And you don't want to share that. You don't want to share that and be damaging. And yet, as leaders, as someone who is acting as a leader, as someone who has been put in a position of leadership, either by title or by function or by job, right? Responsibilities. Anyone who's been put in that position has some level of information that is going to have to be compartmentalized at some point, because not everyone needs or should know everything that you know. And so how do you, when you show up, compartmentalize without hurting yourself? Compartmentalize without getting into such a habit that you're only showing up piecemeal everywhere, right? I think about that all the time. Is how are you showing up? I have so many young people who come to me and they're like, yeah, but if we do that, that's selling out. Assimilation is selling out. And there is a difference, y'all, between assimilating and selling out. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do around your behavior, around your dress, around your whatever, for the environment that you're in, right? You don't wear a swimsuit to a gala, right? There are just some things that are appropriate and some things that are not. It's the same with behavior. And so that compartmentalizing is okay until it gets to be so big and so many things are compartmented that you don't even know who you are and you don't know how to show up. You're showing everybody somebody totally different. So who are you really? And so it's an idea as leaders of figuring out how we continue to be authentic, how we continue to be real, how we continue to speak the truth and show up fully how we are, and understand that not everybody needs to know everything. I say it all the time. People need to know that there's sausage on the menu, but they don't need to know how the sausage is made. They don't need to see all the ugly. The story I tell on the podcast this week and the story I've told before, even on this show, is, I remember when I left my last organization and people coming up and saying, oh my God, we had no idea. Or even when I take them to a meeting, we had no idea this is what you were dealing with. Right. And the reason they didn't know is because it wasn't important for them to know the mess. It was important to know where we were going, what was going on, what some of the challenges were. And I was vocal about that, right? Here's some of the challenges. Here's what we're facing. Here's what I need you to be prepared to hear, right? That kind of stuff. But all the other sausage making, all the other noise, all the other mess was irrelevant to what we were trying to do. Because as leaders, especially the higher you get up in an organization, you are to be the buffer between your people and the mess. That's your role. That is your role, to be the buffer between the people and the mess. That doesn't mean that you don't tell them what's going on. That doesn't mean that you don't guide them. That doesn't mean that you don't give direction, that you don't support, that you don't serve, that you're not open. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is you become very selective about what information is shared, when, and how it is shared. Because again, words matter. And if people don't have the entire context of what's going on, and you don't have the right communication, right? You don't have the right words to tell them. You don't have the right information to be able to share with them, or they're not in a position to be able to handle it. You create more trouble than you thought. And so by compartmentalizing, you've got to be able to take things and put them in the right perspective, and also know when to pull things out and when to put things back in the compartment. But in order to do that, you also got to know how you show up as a leader, right? So we talk about people who process internally and people who process externally. And I tend to be a little bit of both. I'm a very stereotypical Libra in that perspective. There are times when I process internally completely, and there are times when I'm an external processor, because I like getting in a room with people and throwing things up against the wall and what should we do and how to. I don't tend to be one of those folks that's always like, it has to be my idea, it has to be my way. That doesn't tend to be the way I lead. I like getting in there because the best ideas are when we have that conversation. I love good, meaty conversations. But here's what happens. If you don't let people know who are in the room and you are in a leadership position and people are looking to you to tell them what to do, if you don't pay attention to how you're showing up and are clear, hey, we're just chit-chatting, we're just talking about it, here's what we're doing, there are people who are going to walk away and go do some stuff based on what they heard you say. And that may or may not be what you meant. So if you're processing out loud, how do you make sure that people who are watching and listening and following understand, is this an actionable item, or is this just, we just processing? We're just throwing things against the wall. We're just making a decision. We're just having a discussion. We often tend to pay more attention to people who are processing internally, right? Because when people get real quiet, it's like you need to call them out. Hey, what are you thinking? Is there something that you're seeing? Is there something that you're hearing? Is there something that you know that the rest of us need to know, because it's going to impact what we're trying to do? That's really important. So we do have a tendency to pay attention to the quiet people, right? Because still waters run deep, as old folks say. Still waters run deep.
Can I say this real quick?
Yes.
When you said that, I had a person, I outsourced a person to work on some stuff for me,
Mm-hmm.
and they got real quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept saying, hey, you're mighty quiet over there. And
Yes.
I don't want you to say, I don't want you to be stressed out. There are some
Right.
things that I need to know so I know how to make another move
Yes.
if necessary. And they kept saying, no, everything's okay, but everything wasn't okay.
Right.
So you are right. You have to pay attention, especially to those that get quiet. Can you really quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but shout out to Misha Pruitt-Ray, the young lady you said loved you, is on.
Tamisha Pruitt-Ray. Look, y'all, let me tell you something.
Y'all.
Sidebar. I know that was so West Texas. So the back to reality thing that happened this weekend, that was fabulous, right? There was this young lady who came up on the stage and had her guitar and sang. Y'all know how I feel about music anyway. Music soothes the savage beast. There are times when my head is messy and I can pick some music and it just makes a difference. And I just talked about that in my mastermind too. The woman who's leading it said, find your playlist, right? Find your playlist, not the sad stuff. Find your playlist. This woman is on my playlist. It was incredible. Young artist, new to me. So there may be a lot of people who already knew her. New to me. She is fantabulous. I know Jerry's going to post it on your site. I will make sure to post it on mine. Go find her. I think, Jerry, you said she's on Spotify?
Yeah, she's on Spotify.
She's on Spotify. Go look her up. Y'all, just trust me. Trust me.
They're all in agreement. It's Tamisha Pruitt-Ray.
Tamisha Pruitt-Ray. I'm telling you, she was fabulous. Sidebar, right? We do that. That's what we talk about on the live show, y'all. So those of you who are listening are like, where would that come from? But here's the thing. But it's not really a sidebar, because here's the deal. I was just talking about how you're showing up and compartmentalizing, and people who are quiet, right? And people who are processing out loud. This person is not necessarily a person, you can tell by her spirit. She's not necessarily a person who's going to be out there pumping herself up.
Mm-mm.
She's not going to be out there talking about how great she is. She's not going to be talking about how wonderful she is. She's not going to be talking about how unique to be. She is the best guitarist, but that's not who she is. You can tell that in her spirit. I've never met her. I'm just telling you what I felt from her. And yet, her speaking, her showing up, and how she did that in a way that was quiet. Like when Jerry introduced her, she didn't even say anything. She just got up there and said thank you and started singing. There are other people who show up, and before they open their mouth, they got to tell you everything about them, why they're here, what they did, and that's a social media thing too, right? When you get ready to speak, people want to know who you are. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know your story, and that's wonderful. But how about you weave that in so people understand what your message is first, and then why you can be there? Because they can read your bio. People are going to look you up on LinkedIn. But people are going to believe what you do. They will listen to what you say. They will believe what you do. And this girl did it. She did it.
And you just said that because I made the introduction. So after that, she did exactly what after that. There was no more to be said.
Nope.
But you're not going to believe that when I asked her, I had you in mind when I asked her. I figure out what type of audience I'm going to have.
Yes.
And I said, Lord would like something like this, some jazzy guitarists.
Loved it.
And I had so many people that remind me of Laurel.
Yes.
So that's when you're putting people in their proper place so everybody can get a bit of everything.
Absolutely. It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. And that's why when you are showing up as a leader, and when I talk about this compartmentalizing and how you're showing up and how you're taking care of you, you got to know who your audience is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said a minute ago, you don't need to share everything with everybody because not everyone can handle everything, right? Because they're not supposed to. That's not a slam on them. They're not supposed. That person who is on their first job does not need to know what's happening in the executive suite.
Mm.
That is not their role. That is not what they need. That is not going to help them or serve them in as they're learning to come into who they are. That is not saying they're not smart. That is not saying they're not capable. That is not saying they're not intelligent. None of that stuff is true. What is true is you have to decide and understand what is important for whom, because leadership is not about you. It's about the other people that you're serving. It's the other people that you're leading. And so when you think about this compartmentalizing, because I'm just thinking about this woman who got up there, she heard the introduction. She started playing. There were a couple other times she did a happy birthday to someone that was just beautiful. But she did not, I can only imagine, just having grown up around some musicians, I can only imagine what was going through her head, right? I can only imagine. I can't know. I can only imagine what was going through her head. And her ability to compartmentalize, especially if she has any kind of stage fright, right? Any kind of concern about being in front of an audience, about putting stuff aside. I do the same thing when I get up and speak in front of people. I don't have a fear of speaking in front of people. That's not my thing. In fact, the bigger the group, the better. I like really small or really big, just because of my energy level. But there are things that I have to compartmentalize because I am also extremely self-aware. And I'm extremely empathetic, which means I'm absorb everybody else's energy. So I have to compartmentalize a lot of what I'm feeling. I have to compartmentalize, okay, what are you doing with your face? What are you doing with your hands? Are you using your hands? How are you walking? I have to compartmentalize and put all that stuff aside so that I'm focused on being in the zone to deliver the message. But I'm so aware of that I don't have it so compartmentalized that I start to behave or act or speak in a way that is not authentic to me. I haven't set it aside and never go back to it. I put it in a little box because having it out all the time makes it impossible for me to deliver in the way I want to deliver. So when you are out there serving people, you need to give yourself the gift of knowing you, of being self-aware. What can you do to be self-aware? Right? I was working with a client and they were getting ready to do a big, they're getting ready to do a big session, a big like group get together because they haven't all been together at all. And I'm hoping they're still going to be able to do it with the Delta variant. But they hadn't been together like everybody. They had not been together at all in almost 2 years, right? And they've had new people come on and all that. And so it's an opportunity to get together. And one of the things that they were like is, hey, can you talk to us about maybe some exercises around self-awareness? And so I have some, but I also did some research because I'm like, there's other stuff out there. I'm not, let me not pretend that I know everything about self-awareness. And there was this exercise that I'm like, oh my God, I love this exercise. And it may be dating myself, but what I love about it is it says you would go around to everybody and everybody has to list what is their superpower and what is their kryptonite. So those of you who grew up with Superman, right? And now they're doing all the shows. So even younger people get what kryptonite is. That thing that makes you incredible and that thing that just brings you to your knees. What is your superpower and what is your kryptonite? That idea of being self-aware enough to know what those things are, right? And to be able to sit in your superpower and use that to serve, but also understanding what your kryptonite is so you can be aware of it and know when it's about to show up. So you can either acknowledge it, do something different, change behavior, maybe do something to prevent it from showing up. That's important. That's what compartmentalizing is, right? This is my kryptonite. I got it over here. I understand what it is. If this thing shows up that is my kryptonite, I need to put it aside because I got work to do right now. But I'm going to pull it back out because if I ignore it all the time, kryptonite's always going to bring me to my knees. Always. At some point, I got to figure out what it is to prevent this from being kryptonite. Can I turn it into a superpower or at least something that's not detrimental? But in order to use compartmentalization as a tool and not as a weakness for you as a leader, you got to really work on your self-awareness. You got to really work on what drives you, what behaviors are important to you, what behaviors help you show up the best way. You got to really work on that stuff and know you, because that way you can have those conversations with people. You can know what to share and how to share it. You can know what may be impacting your communication style and make adjustments. And if you are self-aware, it gives you a foundation to be aware of others. Remember, we talked about listening actively. And listening actively is listening with your ears, but also listening with your eyes. What are people doing? What are they saying? How are they leaning? Are they still paying attention? What is their body language telling me? What is their response to what I'm saying? That's what listening actively is, listening to understand, not to respond. And if you are aware of yourself and your tendencies, your ability to be in tune with what's going on around you is heightened, not only for yourself, but for other people. Because again, this is about other people, not about you. That's what service is, right? That's what leadership is. Leadership is helping other people achieve a goal, helping other people get where they want to be. Leadership is working yourself out of a job. That's what leadership is. Bringing up the ones who are going to become you so you can go become something else. Mm-hmm. You can go live and lead and nurture and serve somewhere else, because we're not all meant to stay in the same place forever. That's not what we're meant to do. We are living, breathing, growing beings. We're forever changing. And so how can we take our superpower, manage our kryptonite, and go find a way to continue to deliver in other places? That's what's critical. That's what's important. And so this compartmentalizing, while we toss that word around all the time, I'm gonna put this in a little bubble and put it over here. It's a really great tool until it's not. Just like everything, right? Everything used to an extreme can become, every strength used to an extreme can become a weakness. And if you never go back and open that box and understand what it is that's in there, why you put it away in the first place, what it is, what was the reason that you put it away, right? So you can address it and understand whether you can turn it into a tool or whether it's always going to be something that's detrimental and you just need to be aware of it so you can manage through it. If you never pull that back out of the box, you never get to that strength. It always is going to be something that pops up when it's least expected. But if you spend the time to become self-aware, you can help manage those things that could potentially really derail you. You know, that other thing about self-awareness and compartmentalization and showing up as a leader and how you deliver information, right? That sausage making versus just feeding people sausage is who are your people, right? Who are the people that are in your village as a leader? Because it is lonely at the top. It's extremely lonely at the top. And because you can't tell everybody everything, and this is in particular in legal and HR, because there's just stuff we know that you just can't tell anybody else. And you may have that person at work, right? Your work bestie, who you can really pull aside and say, this is the cone of silence. I just need to get rid of this. I need to talk this through. But who are your people outside? Who is your confidant outside, your support system, your external mentor, your therapist? And y'all know I believe in therapy. Where's that place you can go outside that is neutral, that knows you, that is there to support you, and where you can just kind of dump all this stuff that's weighing heavy on you so that you can then get all the emotion out, all the madness, all of the confusion. You can get all of that out so that you can get really focused on a plan. You can get focused on a communication process. You can get focused on understanding what you should say to whom and when, because it's no longer messy for you. And the further you go up in the organization, the more important it is to have those people, to have those safe spaces. We all need a safe space. My friend Alexis that I interviewed last week on the podcast, if you haven't listened to that, please go do that. Created her Ubuntu up in Vermont, and she calls it a safe space for souls to show up. We all need a safe space where we can just let it go. Just let it go. Because most of us are not showing up 100% at any one time. Most of us. And again, I don't mean the appropriateness stuff. I don't mean just managing behavior because of the situation you're in. I mean, really blocking pieces of ourselves off because either they're too hard to deal with or we just don't know how to manifest them in this particular situation that we're in. And that gets really old. That's that mask, right? That's that imposter syndrome. That's that feeling that I can't really be me in that diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Wanting people to be able to show up as their whole selves to an organization, to a job, to life. You want to show up as all of you. And that's hard. That is really hard because, you know, for most of us, there are pieces of us that are not necessarily appropriate for every situation. That's just real. That's just real. There is stuff that we don't bring. There are conversations that I have that I would not have in public, that I have with people who are truly confidants. There are styles of speaking that change based on your environment. They're still authentic to who you are, but you're just kind of managing those. But if you are having to really bury yourself, that compartment becomes like a locked cell of part of you. You're not showing up as the best leader you can be because people aren't getting who you are. And right, wrong, or indifferent, people do want to see vulnerability. They want to see humility. They want to see that, yes, you are strong and you're confident and they can follow you and they can be with you and they can be beside you. And it is safe for them to follow you. But they also want to know and see that you're not perfect either because they want to see themselves in you. They want to see the possibilities in you. And if all you show people is your highlight reel, they don't ever see the behind the scenes. One, they get a false expectation and a false understanding of what it really means to be you. There's a meme that says, people always want your position until they see what it took to get there.
Exactly.
So you need to show people what it takes to get there. That's what real mentorship is. Real mentorship is telling people, yes, absolutely. This is the great things about this job. This is the hard things about this job. And guess what? Here's what you're going to have to be ready to do if you want this job, if you want this position, if you want to start this business. Here are the things you got to be willing to do. And if not, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. You got to do you. But let's be clear about what it takes to do what it says you want. That's why I tell people to always start. What is the work I want to do and why? Because if you know what it is and you know why you want it, then some of the things that you have to do to get it may be difficult, but you can manage through those because you understand the what and you understand the why. So you have to tell people and show people what's real. So your compartmentalization can't be so deep and so broad that people don't see what's real because you're not doing them a service and you're not creating a really great successor for yourself if you've got this whole group of people who don't really know what it means, who have no idea what to expect because you're setting them up for failure. And that's your legacy. Everyone that comes behind you can't do the job. Is that the legacy you want? Or are you preparing people for the next level? Are you preparing them to be as strong as they can possibly be in their way? You're not trying to turn them into you. You're trying to turn them into the best them, or help them, not even turn them, help them achieve the best them they can be. Same thing Celine said when we talked yesterday is you're trying to give people what they need to be them, meet them where they are so that they can be where they want to be in a safe space. In a safe space. And as leaders, you got to find your safe space because sometimes we just need a minute. We need a minute.
There's a statement. Can I say what
yes.
This young lady, and it's going to what you're saying. Kathy Tatum says, it's lonely as a guru. Nonprofits people start conversation as I need and never think you need a day off or need mental break from people not contacting, just a chill or dinner. But yes. Here, I need you to give us this help for my clients.
Right.
So that is the leader needing that safe place because, and you say often that leadership is not about you, but is there a point where, yeah, it is kind of about me where I do need that safe place and I've got to say, I can turn this off, as she's saying, that she gets frustrated when people are always pulling from her. When does it turn off?
Right. It is, you have to be a little selfish in order to be selfless. So when I say leadership is not about you, or it's about serving other people, but in order to serve other people, you've got to take care of you. That's why the airlines say, put your mask on first, because you're so busy helping everybody else, you pass out. Who's going to help you? You have to put your mask on first. That is imperative to your ability to serve. And no is a complete sentence. It's a complete sentence. I just sent a note to our HR leadership network this morning, because again, they were just on my heart. And I just sent them a note and said, you know what? School is starting back up. And these are senior HR leaders. School is starting back up. We're having all these conversations again about masking, no masking, requiring vaccines, not requiring. It's a hot mess for HR people and for lawyers, right? And HR is a thankless job. And I just sent him a note and said, I just want you to know, I see you, I'm thinking about you, and please make sure to take care of you. So if you're in a nonprofit, because I know this happens a lot in nonprofits, because they figure you're in nonprofits, you're in the business of service. What do you mean no? What do you mean you can't show up? To her point, right? What do you mean you can't come to this dinner? What do you mean we can't? What I mean is we are absolutely about service. And in order for us to serve, we have to be sure we are taking care of our people and our organization so that we can continue to show up to serve. And in order to do that, that means we have to say no to some things so we can say yes to other things. And that no may mean no, period. That no may mean not right now. And we're going to tell you which one it is. Because it could be just in this moment, this is not possible. Come back to us in 6 months. Come back to us tomorrow. But it is okay. I'm hereby giving you permission to say no. And you don't have to be ugly to say no. It is not unkind to be clear. It is not unkind to be clear. Sometimes service is about saying no. Good morning, Kendall. It's about saying no. And because Kendall's on here, you know, we hear this a lot with pastors, right? Pastors, priests, deacons, those people who are in religious service, right? Rabbis, they are expected to always be available, to always serve, to always make everybody else feel better, especially those who are assigned to ministries of pastoral care, right? Where you're going into hospitals. I've got a cousin who's a chaplain in a hospital. When you're going into hospitals, when you're going into people's homes, when you're visiting people, when that is your ministry, you are expected to always give. You're putting out all of this energy and all of this care. But sometimes those folks who are given the most need a minute too. Because who are they going to? Who are they being vulnerable with? You know, Robin Williams, who I've loved Robin Williams. I thought he was the most incredible comedian. And he had to have an intellect off the charts. If you ever watch him, like even some of his really early stuff when he was also, you know, not clean, and had some real issues with addiction and depression and other things. This man's ad lib, his brain, the way his brain worked, the way his comedic talent was, it was incredible. And yet he took his own life. And a lot of what he talked about is, you know, we need to understand that you're not on all the time. You can't be on all the time. I think it was Johnny Carson's wife was like, is he funny at home? And she's like, no, he's not. Because see, funny was his job. Funny was his job. Now, he was probably witty and all that kind of stuff and approachable and everything, but funny was his job. Funny wasn't who he was. And your job is your job. You are not, as much as we tell people the opposite, and as much as our behavior tells people the opposite, you are more than your job. You are more than your business. You are more than your ministry. You are more. You are more. Yep, Kendall says every pastor needs a pastor. Amen to that.
You know, when you said that, I was thinking about, I went out to dinner with Maddie J, the comedian, and Don Beasy, the comedian. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh, Lord, this is going to be a big
craziness.
Craziness. You know, everybody going to be trying to overtalk and tell jokes because we're comedians. But it was so refreshing that we were not on and that we could just have a natural conversation. Even our natural conversation, of course, we laughed, of course, but it wasn't expected. It was a different conversation. So you're absolutely right. Everybody your job is not just who you are, because you don't want to do that 24/7. I don't want you to sit here and think I'm going to make you laugh when maybe my thought is on something totally different. So I love that. Exactly.
That whole idea of being on it's heavy. Yeah. It is heavy. That's why you hear so much about, you know, imposter syndrome and taking the mask off and especially for people in communities of color and especially for Black women. That mask we have to have on all the time, because are you showing up angry? Are you incompetent? How are you, what about your hair? What about your nails? You're going to have somebody trying to touch your hair, and you're going to have to deal with that today. All of this kind of madness, these masks we have to put on to show up to make other people comfortable is heavy. It's heavy. Now, the reality of corporate, if you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, is that those relationships and that ability to move is about other people knowing who you are and them being comfortable with you. That's the reality. People promote and are attracted to people that they know a lot about, that they feel comfortable with, right? That they get to know, and you have to be somewhat open to allow people to get to know you. But that doesn't mean you have to let go of absolutely everything. People don't need to know absolutely everything about you in order to know enough about you to understand who you are. You have to decide where that line is. You have to decide where your comfort level is and how much you can give to people. I told this story on the show before that it was years ago, and I wish I could remember who told me this story, where this woman said, we're all born with this bag of marbles. I know young folks don't probably think about marbles anymore, but I used to love marbles. You're all born with this bag of marbles. And every time you meet someone, or every time you do something, every time you engage, you're giving away marbles. But what you don't want to do is get to the end and you have no marbles left for you, right? You have nothing more to give. That's not a place where you want to be. That absolute emptiness, because you still have to be able to give to you in order to continue to give to other people. So that showing up, that compartmentalizing, that being able to have a space where you can take the mask off. Number one, find a way where you can not have to put the mask on all the time, because there's a difference in putting the mask on and just getting your face right so you can show up where you need to show up, right? We talked about this with Kyra last week, right? Sometimes, at least for me, because I don't tend to be a big social butterfly. So I don't want to show up to everything. I just don't have the energy, right? But I have to have a conversation with myself, compartmentalizing, right? I have to have a conversation with myself and say, Laurel, are you just being contrary because you just don't want to go because that's who you are? You're just going to sit up in this hole and just do nothing? Or, are you truly at your energy level where you just can't? Because if it's really the first where you're just being contrary, when you put your face on, just dress up, clean up, go, something always happens that says, this is why I was supposed to be here. Like seeing Tamisha. Because y'all know it was Saturday night at 7 and my bedtime is 8. Because I'm up at 4, right? So I was like, oh. But I wanted to go because I wanted to support Jerry, right? And I wanted to see the play, and I wanted to see the people. I knew it was going to be an awesome event. Wow. And so I put my face on, right? And we went. And it was awesome. I got to see Tamisha, who I didn't know, right? Yeah. So that idea of the difference between showing up with this mask on where you can never take the mask off, you can never be who you are, that is not healthy. That's not healthy compartmentalizing. That's the stuff that is going to suck the soul right out of you. And that is different than showing up and just making yourself get up and show up and just rolling with it the best you can because you know it's going to turn out okay. Because sometimes you just got to do.
Cynthia said you got to meet Joey.
Oh, I did get to meet Joey, our furry friend Joey. Although he didn't have his sunglasses on yesterday, so it's hard to recognize him without his shades. It's there's a difference in having to not be you. That's what having that mask on all the time. There's a difference in not being able to be you, and just telling yourself, you know what? Sometimes you just got to put your big girl, big boy pants on and just go. You just got to go. You need to stop pouting and just go, because there's a reason that you need to be there. And only you can discern when that is the case. But you have to be honest enough with you to do that. You have to know you enough to do that. And you have to love you enough to do that. To know when you need a minute, to know when you need to say no. And to know when you're just being contrary and cantankerous and antisocial. And sometimes when you're just being antisocial, you need to sit in that too, because you might not show up and be able to fix that. And sometimes you just need to fix it. I mean, there are things that I know about myself that I work on constantly. That is one of them. The whole antisocial thing is one of them. because of my energy issue. But the thing that I also know about myself that I don't spend any energy fixing is the fact that I don't have a poker face. You can read what I'm thinking on my face. And at this age, I'm not going to get one, and I don't have the energy to try to figure out how to do it. But because I know that about myself, because I'm self-aware, what I do is I try to make sure that the words that come out of my mouth don't reflect the look that's on my face. So instead of saying, "Are you kidding me? I can't believe you," I say, "Okay, help me understand how we got there, because I'm a little lost." Or I'll say, "I didn't think of that. I wasn't sure I was there yet," right? Taking it on me. I must have misunderstood. I didn't quite get it. Instead of saying what I really want to say, because my face is saying, "That is insane. I can't believe you even thought of that," because we're not doing that. That's what my face says. Mm-hmm. But my words and my tone say, "Okay, maybe I missed something. Can you help me? Because you might be right. I'm just not there. Can you help me?" Right? And that's so much more amenable to people. That is so much nicer, so much kinder. It's not unclear
to be clear.
It's not unkind to be clear. And it's still clear. I didn't get it.
Michelle Johnson says, "What do you think?" And I just talked about this the other day, but I want to see your opinion.
Yeah.
She said, "What do you think about the statement, 'Fake it till you make it'?"
You know, so that's an interesting statement. I think to some extent, the "fake it till you make it" makes some sense, right? That whole idea of doing what you got to do till you can do what you want to do. The challenge is, for me, words matter, and fake it till you make it, when it first came out, was really about, you know what, I don't feel like doing this right now. I'm not quite there, but I'm going to get in and I'm going to do it. And I know once I do it, something will happen. It's turned into, don't be you, right? It's turned more into an alignment with imposter syndrome. I'm not me. I'm just going to fake it. I'm not good enough. I'm not intelligent enough. I didn't deserve this. I didn't, all of that stuff that's negative self-talk has now become attached to this fake it till you make it. If you got to fake it till you make it, then you must not expect yourself to be here. You must not be ready. You must not be willing. You must have some issues. It's attached all this other stuff to it. So I would rather say, instead of fake it till you make it, is just keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep showing up. Because in that, you show up the best way you can show up. Just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Keep showing up online. Keep showing up at your job. Keep showing up with your family. Keep showing up in the relationship. Because if you just keep showing up, then you're getting information that can tell you when it's time for it to be over, when it's time for you to walk away, when it's time for you to change the relationship. Because it only takes one person to change a relationship. It only takes one person to walk away. It only takes one person to put something in perspective, right? And we have the power to do that. And if we keep showing up, we keep getting information that helps us formulate our plan of action. But if we're in fake it till we make it, especially now, we're so focused on faking it that we may never make it. Because faking it becomes the goal, is faking it. Whereas showing up, if you just say, just show up, just keep showing up. Showing up becomes the goal. I want to show up. I want to be here. I want to be visible. I want to be in it. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know what that means. I really don't feel like it, but I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep showing up, because eventually something's going to happen and I'm going to know. I'm going to know when it's time not to. I'm going to know when it's time to do something different. I'm going to know when this is really where I was supposed to be. I'm going to reap the benefits of showing up. And that benefit may be, oh man, this happened. Or it may be, now I know. Now I know for sure. What is it? This I know for sure. So I would rather say, just keep showing up than fake it till you make it. Because it has less negative connotation, at least from my perspective. Jerry, what was your perspective on that?
My perspective is, I didn't like the fake. I think it's the word. I didn't like to fake it because I just didn't want it to be fake. But I understand that is, what you just said, you broke it down, to show up and be consistent, because many people want leadership. Many people want to be the head of something. But if you're not consistent, Or if you may have a bad day, they don't know
Yeah.
what leaders go through in the course of the day, and they still have to show up and
Yeah.
turn on the mic and do what they do. You still got to show up and do what you need to do.
Right.
You also talked about earlier, I want to ask this question. You were talking about what leaders have to share or people have to talk. Who do they talk to? Other leaders? Or are you talking about to the organization?
So, that's very interesting. So leaders have an obligation to talk to the organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an obligation to tell people what's going on. And you have an obligation to figure out how to send that message in a way that is honest and truthful, because people know when you lie. Honest and truthful, but also you manage how much, that's just real. You manage how much of the detail you give to people. You give them the message, you give them the stuff they need to know in order to perform their jobs, right? In order to do what they need to do. But that doesn't mean, again, everybody doesn't need to know how the sausage is made, but they do need to know that there's sausage.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they don't know that a meal is coming, right? So they need to know that people need to know that their leaders have a plan. Mm-hmm. People need to know that their leaders see, you know what, we got a problem, that they're not burying their heads in the sand, that they aren't just blindly leading because they're following you. If you want them to continue to follow you, you got to give them something to follow. Mm-hmm. So you do have to communicate with people. When I talk about leaders finding someone else, sometimes it's another leader, right? So if you're in a really big organization, that may be another leader that you guys came up through the organization together, maybe, and you guys are in different departments and you have a cone of silence. And that's good to have that somebody internally. But it is critical as a leader that you have somebody outside of your organization, that you can have a cone of silence with, that you can just completely dump and vent, that you can be completely vulnerable. Because people do need to know that you have days, that you have bad days, that you're not perfect. They want to see that. But there's only so much mess that people can tolerate. There's a very fine line for leaders between, man, I'm having a bad day, and she is having a nervous breakdown. What are we going to do? Because if she doesn't show up, how are we going to make this happen, right? It's a fine line. And you only know when you've crossed it, You only know you've crossed it when people are like, we don't know what to do. What do we do? How do we handle this, right?
When you said that, I'm thinking somebody was telling me, a person I outsourced, the same person, they gave me a litany of problems. And I'm going to be honest, in the midst of giving me the litany of problems, the deadlines were missed of what I needed from them.
Right.
So is that a time to really tell the person that you owe all this stuff to, all your problems, because that person is focusing on their product?
No, it is, that's an interesting question. That's why you have external people. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the things that we're dealing with, people just don't need to know.
Yeah.
They don't need to know. Everyone is not your therapist. Everyone is not your therapist, right? Everyone is not your best friend. Everyone is not your sounding board. One, everyone is not capable. Two, everyone is not available, either mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever. And three, everyone does not have that competence to be able to be that for you. So you are dumping onto someone who just doesn't have the capacity to handle that for you. They can't carry that bucket for you. So you have to be aware, you have to be discerning. Sometimes people will dump everything on you because they haven't performed. They have missed a commitment to you. Mm-hmm. So they want to justify missing it by giving you all of the stuff. That's the reasons. But here's the deal. The fact is that you missed the commitment. Yes, I'm concerned because you're someone who's never missed a commitment. So I'm concerned that you're okay. But in this moment, I just need to know how I'm going to get the commitment made, and then we can readdress it. Doesn't mean I don't care. Doesn't mean I'm not concerned. It just means that at the moment, the issue is the commitment wasn't made. And that has significant ramifications and impacts on outcomes. And so we got to address that first before we can address the why. That's why they call them postmortems. In the moment when you're trying to get something done, when things don't happen, hopefully you have a early notification system. You see something's going wrong, you can catch it, you can fix it, and you can move on. And then you go back when it's done and say, okay, now what happened? What happened? Why did it happen? How can we prevent it the next time? What's going on? You do that post-mortem. Jerry and I were talking here earlier, and I said, hey, I just want to let you know about some speakers in the back. She said, oh, they weren't working. I said, yeah. I said, but it wasn't a big deal. Some other stuff happened. I just know you. And I know how you want stuff to show up. And we saw the speakers, and we knew they weren't working. And I wasn't going to go up there and say, in the middle of all the stuff you're trying to do, that the speakers weren't working. Because in that moment, those speakers weren't working, didn't keep us from experiencing the event.
Because you heard it in the car.
Because we heard it in the car. So there was a plan B, right? There was something that compensated for all of that. But in my discernment, in my post-mortem, right? Because now the event is over. I know that Jerry is already doing, she was probably doing it that night. All the stuff that went really great. All the stuff that she would do different next time. All of that kind of stuff. So I'm like, let me give this to her so she can put it on the list so that next time when she talks to her sound people, they know to double check that, because that could have just been somebody stepped over a plug, somebody, you know, something really, really simple. But if you don't know, you can't fix it.
And you're right, because that was the plan B in case the speakers, the actual plan was for you just to hear it in your car and drive it. But in case the speaker or something went out, or the system for the car went out, you had the speaker.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that you told me that. But only a leader such as yourself would know not to share that with me when you see me going from point A to point B and had 100,000 things to do.
Okay.
And if it wasn't going to affect the show, you knew as a leader, then leave it alone. And I'll tell her later so she'll know to do that next time, to check it out.
It would have been one thing if I'd seen sparks coming from the screen.
Yeah.
Right. Right. If I'd have seen something on fire, if I'd have smelled, that's different. Somebody needs to know immediately. This was incidental.
Yeah.
It did not impact the show at a level that needed immediate attention.
And leaders know that wasn't a criticism, because I made a mental note, because some people can't be told anything. Well, this is wrong. No, I need to know that, because that's a note in my head to remember for the next one we do, to make sure to check the back speakers. I didn't see it because you are a leader and you've done stuff. So I didn't see that as a criticism. That was an observation that you knew I would take care of. So I appreciate that.
And you got to know your people. That's why I said in the very beginning, when you are a leader and you're trying to decide what to tell people, what can they handle? What can they understand? How do you meet them where they are with the information that you know they need? But communication does not happen if the other person hasn't heard it.
And going back to the person that was dealing with my stuff, I had to walk on eggshells basically, because I still needed the product.
Right.
And I discerned that they were in a fragile state.
Right.
And I wouldn't got anything.
Right.
So you said post conversation.
Absolutely.
I'm at the show now.
Right.
Let's talk. This is what I did not like. This is what needs to be corrected. Right. Blah, blah, blah. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they say post-mortem. And leaders, you know, when I talk about active listening, you got to know your surroundings. You got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to know the event. You know, even if you've never produced anything in your life, never. You've gone to concerts, you've gone to plays, you've gone to events. You see people running around crazy. You're not stupid. If there's somebody you know who is involved with the event and you see something going on, pass that through a filter of, is this going to impact the quality of the event, or is this just something they need to know because I know what their standard is for quality? Answer that question, and that can help discern whether or not you need to tell them in the moment.
That's good. This is a good question, because I've had to learn this. How does the person that you vent to or talk with decompress from information overload?
You know, that's a really good question, because again, as someone who is an empath and absorbs everybody else's energy, and somebody who a lot of people talk to, it is difficult. And I always thought I wanted to be a therapist, and I'm still planning to get my PhD, but I look back on it now and I think the way I absorb other people's energy, the way I take on stuff, I just don't know that was the right thing to do. I don't know how much help I'd really be to people in that day-to-day, you know, back-to-back kind of thing. So I do it in other ways. But what I have to do, there are times. So when I advise people, you know, my coaching practice, the way I've set it up is I only do so many people a day, and ultimately so many people a week. Why? Not because I want my schedule to look like it's scarce and I want it to be hard to get in touch with me, so it looks like I'm bigger or better than I am. I'm so busy that I don't have time. You have to schedule it. I do that on purpose because I know me, and I need time to, one, process what I've done with the person, make sure I've taken good notes so we keep them on track, because it's about them, not about me. But then I also know that in order for me to then serve the next person as fully as I served everyone, for them to get 100% of me, I can only do so much to be able to manage the energy. So the person who's taken on everybody else's stuff, you have got to be self-aware. You have got to put your mask on first. And there are some times with really good friends that I've had to say, I can't. Today I can't. I just need a minute. And there are people that I'll say, you're not going to hear from me today. I'm okay. I'm just having to kind of go to ground today. You just tell people. And you have enough honor for yourself and enough love for yourself to take that minute. That's what self-awareness is about. Am I just not showing up because I don't want to, or do I really need a minute in order for me to serve the way I want to serve? Right? Kendall said that fake it till you make it is about imaginary competence. That's right. If you don't know, get help. I agree.
Sharon St. Louis said about that fake it till you make it. She prefers your perspective better than the fake it.
Yeah, just show up. Yeah, and Kendall says, and this is big because pastors do this all the time too, and they're masterful at this. Most of them is you must not take on ownership of everybody else's problem. That's what happens a lot. When we are the person for other people, we tend to start owning everybody else's stuff. And I got to tell you, for me, I got enough of my own stuff to own. I just can't own everybody else. I just can't. I can listen. I can be supportive. We can work through challenges and obstacles. We can do all of that, but I can't own it. I can't own it. And when I find myself getting to the point where I'm only talking about everybody else's stuff and not mine, I know that I have moved from support to ownership, and I need to fix that.
Yeah.
But that's because I pay attention to me in order to be able to serve everybody else. All right.
That's good.
That's about compartmentalization today.
That was good.
Make sure you do compartmentalize when you have to. Just don't sit in that so much that you can't show up as who you are, that you can't be who you are, that you can't serve the way you want to serve. Keep showing up. Keep showing up, because when you do show up, you will make it, and you will know where you need to stop showing up when you keep showing up. Thank y'all for tuning in. For those women that are watching, listening, make sure to check out Empowerment Village on Facebook. We're starting our challenge tomorrow. We'll have some swag we're going to give out for people who do their just one thing every day. So check that out, pass it on. I'll do some postings about that too. Listen to the podcast this week. It drops tomorrow. She is sharing some good stuff, y'all. So if you got something out of this one, you'll get a lot out of that tomorrow as well. And pass it on. I really, truly appreciate every share, every, hey, check this girl out. Every single one of those matters to me. And I appreciate you. And I thank you for doing that, because I couldn't keep doing it if you didn't keep showing up. So thank you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.